UFC Fight Night. Namajunas versus Cortez. The UFC is in Denver, Colorado this weekend for a matchup between two of the highest rated flyweights in the division. A lot of other interesting fights on this card, so let's get right into it. First off, we have a match between Evan Elder and Darrius Flowers. I think Elder should run away in this fight. Flowers is pretty much a journeyman at this point. I mean, it felt like his win to get into the UFC was kind of bizarre. There was like that slam, which was really cool, but it led to like kind of a freak injury. And then since being in the UFC, he's done pretty much nothing. Got destroyed by Jake Matthews, and even Michael Johnson put a clinic on him. Evan Elder has had some battles. He had a really close fight with Nazim Salikhov, fight that he was winning, but I think a cut caused him to have to forfeit. I'm pretty sure Evan Elder is going to skill gap Flowers in this one. He's going to be the better cardio guy here, more well-rounded. Flowers got taken down by Michael Johnson, for crying out loud. Elder is going to dominate this fight, and I think he eventually finds a KO just from Darrius Flowers being in worse shape than him. Next up, we have a middleweight matchup between Josh Fremd and Ange Petroski. Both these guys have had ups and downs as of late. I think Petroski has had the bigger downs between these two. Both are coming off of getting finished. Petroski's was in a kind of freakish, like, even on Tapology, they credit it to like KO due to like collision or something. Very bizarre. Still don't know what exactly happened. A lot of just bad signs coming from Petroski. Fremd is so much bigger. He's going to have like a 4 or 5 inch height advantage, some reach on him, and Petroski really has no striking capability whatsoever. I think Josh Fremd KOs Ange Petroski pretty early in this one. Next up is a bantamweight fight between Luana Santos and Mariya Agapova. Agapova has been finished in her last 2 fights. You don't see that very often in the bantamweight division. A lot of those fights go to decision. She's 2-3 overall in the UFC, so she's got that lifetime losing record. Santos is 2-0 in the UFC. She's pretty big. She's strong. We saw her really give it to Stephanie Egger, just kind of muscled her way to a win here. That's what I kind of see happening here. She's going to just muscle Agapova up on the cage, win in the clinch, and I think she takes a unanimous decision victory in this one. Next up is a bantamweight matchup between Montel Jackson and Damon Blackshear. Jackson's coming off of a round 1 KO versus Ronnie Yaya. Yaya's basically an old man at this point. It's not the most, it's kind of what I would expect of Montel Jackson in that situation. He didn't let Yaya mess around with the grappling at all, put him out really quick. He's on a 4-fight win streak on top of that, so he's really coming on as of late. Blackshear has had more ups and downs as of late, kind of like a career 500 fighter in the UFC. Both these guys are super solid everywhere. I mean, they're not going to have any glaring weaknesses. They fight pretty straight up and try to like use their reach against guys. So this one is definitely super close. I'm going to go with Montel Jackson. I think he's just had the more success as of late. Probably the more powerful guy out of these two if I had to pick as well. So Jackson by decision is going to be the pick. Next up, we have a flyweight matchup between Jasmine Jasudavicius and Fatima Kline, who is making her debut. Don't know much about Kline. I know that she's 6-0. I think she's like 22, 23 years old. I'm confident that she hasn't fought anybody with pretty much any athletic bones in their body, just from what I've seen. Maybe she's coming off of one fight where she had to actually work against her opponent. She's going to be taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius here, who really likes to grapple. We know that she's, been in the game for a while now. Super tough. She's pretty big for a flyweight, I'd say, Jasudavicius, and she's just athletic. Fatima Kline, I know that she's one of these lifelong jiu-jitsu practitioners. During my research, I just popped on her Instagram and scrolled and saw the oldest photo. I could see her in a gi, and you could tell that she's like, she's been in the game for a while now, but Jasudavicius is going to have so much in-cage experience on her. I'm sure Jasudavicius has been grappling for a really long time now as well. I think it's just too much of a step in competition to rely on Fatima Kline. So we're taking Jasmine Jasudavicius by decision. I think she's going to be, she's older. She's going to have the strength advantage. I think she's going to control her on the ground. Next up, we have a flyweight matchup between Joshua Van and Charles Johnson. Van really took the UFC by storm, racked up 3 wins in basically 7 months, spanning from mid 2023 to I think his last fight was in like March of this year or something. He beat guys like Zhalgas Zhumagulov, Kevin Borjas, I believe, and he's looked really impressively doing it. Felipe Bunez. Charles Johnson, on the other hand, had a really tough 2023 year. I think he went 0-4 pretty much, but he's 2-0 in 2024 and looks like a completely different fighter. And he's won decisively in those matchups. He beat Jake Hadley and Azat Maxim, who everyone was drooling over because he was one of these 15-0 Kazakhstanis. And he's looked really impressive. Johnson's a tough guy to deal with. He's tall and he's long for the flyweight division. Van is, more of a typical stature of a flyweight, 5'5". I think he has something like a 65-inch reach. Johnson's going to have a big reach on him. Johnson is going to move backwards and Van is going to advance because that's kind of his game. But Johnson's a hard guy to land clean on, especially up top. I think Van's going to try and work the body a lot here because he's not going to be able to really touch him up top too much. But I can see Van struggling with the experience and the size of Charles Johnson here. Johnson's got that added grappling threat as well. But I can see him sort of taking round 1 slow, seeing what Van has to offer him, and then sort of separating himself in the second and third. He's a strong counterpuncher. He's going to have that reach, so he's going to be able to hit Van and not be hit back in certain positions. And, Van, for all of his activity, I mean, who knows how much time he's had to really recover. He's young, obviously, so he has that going for him. But Johnson is, I think, a pretty tough cookie, tough puzzle as well. So Charles Johnson, by decision, is going to be the pick here. He's going to land the harder shots, and I think he's going to have a lot of success counterpunching. Next up is a middleweight matchup between Abdul, Razak, Alhassan, and Cody Brundage. I'm not really overthinking this one. It's the middleweight division. I think the guy who punches harder is going to win this one. That's Abdul Razak Alhassan. Brundage, I think he showed up a little better versus Bo Nickel than some people thought. In actuality, all he did was kind of defend a couple takedowns, but he never really had Bo Nickel in any trouble whatsoever. Abdul Razak is super stocky at middleweight. I think he's going to be a tough guy to take down, and you're not going to control him for 15 minutes, and you're not going to get hit. If you're Cody Brundage, you're not going to avoid his hands for 15 minutes. I think Abdul Razak Alhassan finds a KO here. He was talking crazy at the press conference about DDP as well. I recommend you guys check that out. The next fight, which I believe we are on the main card by now, is a matchup between Julian Erosa and Christian Rodriguez. C-Rod continues to be pretty controversial in his short UFC career. He's only had 3 fights, but controversies include missing weight terribly versus Cameron Simon. He goes on to dominate that fight, but that just left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And then many people felt he lost his fight versus Isaac Dolgarian. I know there was like a bit of a glove grab in there. I'm not going to overreact to that. I felt he deserved to win that fight, maybe a draw, but he was definitely won the second round, and even though it was a 10-8 in the first round, I think there's just as much of a case for a 10-8 in the third round for C-Rod, so I had no problem with that. He's a skilled grappler, and he's definitely tough. We've already seen him overcome some controversy, or overcome some tough times in the cage. Not sure what the word I was looking for is. I'm definitely suspicious of how he'll hold up against some of the bigger flyweights, but Julian Erosa is not the most physically imposing guy. He's tall, but he's not going to really just muscle you or try and bully you with his size. I think C-Rod will find a way to control Erosa on the ground, and I'm not really too worried about any submission threat from Julian Erosa. We saw him get out of some crazy submissions of Isaac Dolgarian. So I think his submission defense is going to be very strong, and I think he's going to win a decision here. He's just going to control him on the ground and neutralize any sort of reach advantage Erosa will have on the feet. So I expect C-Rod to win and win controversially. Next up was a welterweight matchup between Gabriel Bonfim and Ange Loosa. Bonfim has suffered his first loss in his career to Nicholas Dalby in his last outing. Dalby was a guy who just had way too much dog in him to, he just had all of the forward pressure in that fight. Bonfim pretty much gassed out by the second round starting, and from there, Dalby just really put a beating on him. Found the finish in the second. There's no doubt that Gabriel Bonfim is a really dangerous grappler. He's got a lot of submission wins under his belt and even a few in the UFC already. But his striking and his cardio is very, very suspect. And I think Ange Loosa is going to be a difficult matchup for him. He's a really strong guy, physically strong. You can just tell looking at him. I think his defensive grappling is going to be strong enough to just keep him from getting tapped immediately. And he's going to be the harder puncher here. And I really just worry about Bonfim, his body holding up. And he just, I don't know. I think his body just sort of quits on him. We saw it happen versus Nicholas Dalby. Loosa's definitely the more powerful guy, although he's probably not going to have as much output. Nevertheless, I think Loosa finds a KO in this one in the second round. He's going to survive maybe some grappling situations with Bonfim early, but he's going to be the much fresher guy, and Bonfim, I think, he's just going to crumble under the pressure. Next up, we have definitely the fight I'm most excited for. Super exciting lightweight matchup between Drew Dober and Jean Silva. Jean Silva, it's like he never left. He fought pretty much 2 weeks ago to the day of this event at UFC 303. Super impressively KO'd Charles Jourdain, was pretty much in the driver's seat that entire fight. We saw the power difference was stark between him and Jourdain, and he was pretty much never in trouble. He's a really powerful striker. He's got 2 KOs in as many fights in his UFC career. And on top of being a powerful striker, he's super accurate. He's going to move forward, and the guy just lands shots. And he's going to be moving up to lightweight in this matchup versus Drew Dober. He did miss weight versus Charles Jourdain. Not horribly, but he still missed weight. But that power is definitely going to translate. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Drew Dober is a guy who's been in a lot of wars, and he's got one of the best chins in the UFC. We've seen him take so many shots that you just can't believe and walk away from it. But he also has the biggest chin in the Northern Hemisphere. John Silva is going to find that thing sooner or later. It's just a question of, is Dober going to be able to take it? Is John Silva going to be able to take the power coming back from Drew Dober? This one's such a toss-up. It probably is going to be whoever lands cleaner first. It'll be interesting to see how John Silva handles a skilled southpaw like Drew Dober. I do think Silva is the faster guy here. He's got the faster hands, but as far as power goes, pure power, not many guys throw harder than Drew Dober. So this fight's going to be crazy. I'm taking Silva to win this one by KO. Speed is really the difference maker between fights between 2 power punchers, and I think the speed advantage lies with Jean Silva, so that is my pick. On to the co-main event. It's a snooze. Welterweight matchup between Santiago Ponzinibbio and Muslim Salikhov. Couldn't care less about the results of this fight. They don't matter. It's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they start every episode with, it's the show where the points don't matter and they're all made up. Well, the results don't matter here. Neither of those guys is making any sort of welterweight run. There's a strong possibility both guys hang it up after this fight. So, nevertheless, got to provide a pick. we're just going to say Ponzinibbio. I think he's the guy in better shape here. Muslim Salikhov is going to have a couple spinning heel kicks, whatever you want to call them, and they're going to look really cool, and then he's going to go back to being an old man and, a guy who's pretty much on his way out in this sport. So Ponzinibbio by decision is going to be the pick here. Both these guys, have had definitely some impressive careers, but they're shells of their former selves, and, it is what it is. So Santiago, Ponzinibbio by decision is the pick there. On to the main event, a fight that I, on the other hand, am super excited for, that actually has a lot riding on it. We have a flyweight matchup between Rose Namajunas and Tracy Cortez. Really interesting matchup here. Rose is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, someone who I really felt was on the precipice of superstardom. I know it for a fact. And she pretty much threw it away versus Carla Esparza in the worst fight you'll ever see. And it was a fight that she was the more skilled fighter, the better fighter, the more athletic fighter. And, some of that responsibility for her performance rests on her shoulders. I blame the coaches for most of that, for saying, Rose, hey, you're doing a great job. Be patient, be patient. She was just so tentative in a fight that she should have never been tentative in. She was better in every area than Carla Esparza, if you ask me. Esparza, I'm pretty sure, had a kid like the week before. So, obviously I'm kidding there, and Carla Esparza was, a dog back in the day and had that win over Rose Namajunas, but she had no business winning that fight. That's in the past. The comeback starts here, though. Rose has so much riding on this. If she gets a win versus Tracy Cortez here in front of a crowd, I think it does say a lot that the UFC is putting her in front of a live crowd in Denver, where I think she spent some time training, although I think she's based out of like Milwaukee or something. That's all significant. The UFC knows that I think a few wins from her can put her right back in the limelight. I think there's so much to like about her game and just about her personality. She's just super, she's got the star power for sure. And she's got the skills as well. So she made her flyweight debut versus Manon Fiorot. I did not agree with the public perception of that fight. A lot of people felt that she got dominated, or that wasn't a close fight. I completely disagree. I think you can absolutely make a case for Rose winning that fight versus Manon Fiorot, who, by the way, is probably the number one contender in the division right now. But we saw Rose just show how skilled of a striker she is. Obviously, the size of Manon Fiorot was a big issue, and she broke her hand during that fight. But I still felt that she had a lot of success in that fight. I know Jamal Hill agreed with me because he was about the only person I saw saying that Rose might have won that fight as well on Twitter. I don't know if that helps my argument or not, him being on my side, but we obviously cannot skip over her opponent, Tracy Cortez, who also is super impressive and I think has a lot of star power as well. She's a super strong grappler. She's on a 10-fight win streak. So although I think she has been fighting the best opponents, and this is pretty much her first matchup versus a true flyweight contender, she's handled her business. She's done everything that she needed to do versus her previous 10 opponents. She's a really good wrestler. She's, you won't see her on her back very often, and I think her grappling could definitely present an issue to Rose in this matchup. That being said, this is a 5-round fight. It's a lot harder to grapple for 5 rounds than to try and put in work on the feet. I think Rose is going to be the much more skilled striker in this matchup, although Tracy Cortez does have some hands as well. Rose just has a lot more weapons, though. She's super quick, and I don't really see Cortez being able to grapple her way to a win here over the course of 5 rounds. Rose has that 5-round experience to fall back on. She's the only woman in the UFC to defeat Zhang Weili, who's pretty much looked unbeatable as of late. So For those reasons, I'm taking Rose to win by decision here. I think her striking is really going to set her apart here. I think the comeback train has never been more inevitable for any fighter than Rose Namajunas. All she's got to do is handle her business, and she's right back in the title conversation. And I'm all the way here for it. So that is the breakdown. Let me know if you agree, disagree, or other. And we will catch you on the next one.